Well, you are telling, sir, government has not spent. Where is the money for the government? Due to pandemic, there is a contraction. So the GST revenues have fallen down. So have declined sharply. Well, when government itself loses revenue, how can it spend? Your arguing fell. You have to spend. But how can government spend when it doesn't even have its own revenues? Well, this sounds quite an odd or confident argument if you do not understand economics properly. Government is not a household. A household may not be in a position to spend when it loses income. It is not true with households also. I'll give a comparison between my maid servant, my driver, and myself. If my maid servant doesn't have income, job for this month, she cannot spend because she doesn't have a bank balance. Our incomes are so meager that they were sufficient, not even sufficient, to meet our livelihood requirements every month. So there is no question of saving. So she cannot spend if she loses a job or income. But that's not the case with Professor Nageshwar. Assuming that I lose my job for a year, still I can live for 5 years. Even without job, I can live for 10 years. So when there is a difference in households, there will be difference in household and a government. And a poor household cannot spend when it doesn't have income. But a government can certainly spend when it doesn't have income also. How can government spend? I'll give you a couple of examples. So the government can tax the rich, can tax the super rich. I'm not telling this is the right time for to tax the businessmen or industrialists. I'm only referring to the super rich. At least tax those who can afford to be taxed. I'll give you only one example. India's GDP in the first quarter contracted by 24%. But during the same period, Ambani's geo income revenues have increased by 183%. So obviously, Ambani can be taxed. So Adani during this pandemic took control of the 6 airports in India, including the Mumbai Airport and the Navi Mumbai Airport and the Trivandrum Airport. Adani never had an experience in civil aviation, but still it takes care of the airports in India. Like Anil Ambani, who never even manufactured detergent soaps, has taken contract from Dassault to produce components for the Rafale warplanes. So this is the level in which we are living in, how the crony capitalists flourish in India. So this shows that there is enough possibility to tax these crony capitalists whose incomes have substantially increased during the pandemic period when the entire country is in economic crisis. Ambanis and Adanis are having a field day amassing wealth. Why don't you tax them? I'll give you another example. The world's super rich, including the owner of the Walt Disney, have appealed to the governments across the world. We have a lot of money. We are filthy rich. Please tax us. They have given an appeal to the global leaders. Please tax us. We have enough money. Tax us and spend on people. So therefore, this is the time for a Robin Hood taxation where you tax the super rich to spend for the people of this country. I'll give you another example. Well, you don't intend to tax the super rich because they are your patrons during the time of elections, and the political bosses are cannot be audacious in this regard, even though I have a cogent argument to that effect. But let me tell you other ways. You can borrow from the markets because the government of India can borrow, and this will not impact the credit rating because every other country is borrowing now because the economic crisis induced by COVID-19 is not unique to India. It is common to the world. So therefore, no rating agency can afford to downgrade India just because its market borrowings have increased. Well, if the market is not ready to give you, I'm sure the market will be ready to lend to government of India because our foreign exchange reserves are more than 500 billion. So in 1991, when India introduced economic reforms, the foreign exchange reserves were not even sufficient to meet the 15-day import bill. Unlike the situation in 1991, today India suffers from a problem of plenty. So we have huge foreign exchange reserves which are proving to be costlier to even hold them. So therefore, it is wrong to argue that India cannot borrow. Government of India can still borrow to spend for the people, and also it can even borrow from the people of India. Assuming that if the government of India issues a bond and invites people to invest with a relatively higher rate of return, millions of Indians like you and me will invest in these bonds because these bonds will have a sovereign guarantee by the government of India. And even if you give a higher interest on that, it will ultimately reach the people. So if the people of the country get a higher rate of interest, the government may lose money, but economy will benefit because people will again spend that increased incomes. So it sounds economic sense to raise money from the markets and raise money from the people also. And I will give you another thing. Otherwise, there is a concept. This concept of borrowing is called deficit financing. Well, the governments do not believe in deficit financing, but this is they believe in the so-called FRBM, fiscal responsibility and budget management. But I'm also telling you, across the country, including United States of America, are resorting to the concept called quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. Well, there's another concept called helicopter money. Helicopter money is the central bank just prints the money and distributes it to the people. I am not for helicopter money because that will be untargeted spending. But I am for quantitative easing, or we call it monetary easing. What do you mean by quantitative easing? Reserve Bank of India prints money and lends it to the governments to spend. So that it won't, well, this is the practice which United States Federal Reserve has implemented even after the global financial crisis of 2008. Even many European countries are doing. So why should government fear from resorting to quantitative easing? Well, the government argument is it will increase the money supply in the economy and will lead to inflation. And the second concern of the government is it will lead to rating agencies reducing India's rating. I have already told you that rating agencies will not do this precisely because not just India is doing it, India is not doing, in fact, every other country is doing, including the United States of America, which is the home for most of these rating agencies. And it won't increase inflation. Inflation is anyhow increasing. At least when there is growth and inflation, it is bearable. Now we don't have growth and inflation is even rising. So at a time when there is a demand compression in economics, when there are people, when there are supply of goods and services, when there are no people to buy them, any quantitative easing will not result in substantial increase in inflation. Even if there is a smaller doses of increase, they can be manageable because when you resort to quantitative easing, which means government will spend money, public investment will spur private investment, and there will be an economic impetus. So this impetus will result in more goods and services production, and GDP will increase. So obviously that will taper out the inflation. So it is as simple as that. When government spends 5 lakh crores in the economy, and these 5 lakh crores are printed by Reserve Bank of India, the money supply will increase, definitely. Well, inflation is nothing but too much money chasing too little goods. So the money supply will be more than the supply of goods and services initially. But when you spend 5 lakh crores in the economy, that will result in higher income for the people, resulting in higher spending. When there is a higher spending, there will be higher consumption of goods and services. When there is higher consumption in goods and services, there will be higher production. So obviously, the increased money supply will result in increased production, resulting in higher supply of goods and services, thereby balancing the inflation levels. So, in this point of time, that the perhaps seems to be a much better alternative. Otherwise, what will happen? The growth is declining, government revenues will decline. When government revenues decline means public investment will fall. Public investment, low level of public investment result in low private investment, which is already evident in the Q1. So low public and private investment means low growth. Low growth means again low revenues. So we will be in a vicious circle. So government will never come out of this financial crisis if you do not take bold measures. So this is what the solution. Well, I'm not telling money should be spent like that. I'm only telling, well, I'm not telling distribute money like that. So I'm only telling a minimum money cash incentive of 7,500 per each family can be given to all non-income tax families, which will result in a huge spending, because the poor person who gets 7,500 per month will not store it in Swiss bank, will not buy gold, will not keep in a bank deposit, will obviously spend in the economy, and public investment on infrastructure can increase. Like we can build schools, we can build hospitals, we can build rural roads, we can take up irrigation project, we can take up desilting of tanks, we can create urban infrastructure, we can do many more things with this public investment. So public investment can be made to develop infrastructure. So this is the only possible solution to the economic crisis. If otherwise, India will slip into a vicious circle of economic crisis. It has to be moved into a virtuous cycle where there will be jobs, jobs will have incomes, incomes will have spending, spending will result in production, production will result in again jobs. So this can only happen with a trigger by the government of India, because state governments have very limited economic resources. On the contrary, government of India controls the levers of Indian economy. But quite unfortunately, the governments are suffering from fiscal conservatism, which is not supported either by the logic, common sense, or by the economic theory. Today is the time when economists of all hues are recommending a massive push in public investment. The economists across the ideological spectrum are recommending it. Look at what Amartya Sen, Raghuram Rajan, and Abhijit Banerjee have written. They have authored a joint article calling for higher increases in public investment. Even economists like Geeta Gopinath of International Monetary Fund, IMF, which is a prophet of conservative economics, also says that the public investment has to increase. Abhijit Banerjee, Nobel laureate, has simply said put money into the hands of the people. This is what the capitalist economies are doing. This is what economists of all colors are doing. Why should India hesitate? What prevents India from coming out of this fiscal conservatism, which doesn't help either economy or the people or even the governments? Unsurprisingly, it won't even help the governments. Then you may ask a question, then why is it government doing so? Nirmala Sitharaman is an economist from London School of Economics. Piyush Goyal is a very intelligent chartered accountant. Well, do they not know it? They know it. But still they don't do it because that is the class interest they represent. The world rich, the global rich and Indian rich do not like public investment to increase. They do not want governments to spend. Why are they against government spending? They're against government spending. Both the global finance capital and Indian big business do not want government to spend. Why are they against government spending? They're against government spending because when government spend for people, the government will not have a fiscal capacity to give incentives to them. So the big business of India and the big capital of the world wants incentives for themselves. In September 2019, Government of India has given 1,45,000 crore incentive by reducing corporate income tax by 10%. So when government spend for people, they do not have the fiscal capacity to dole out such generous incentives to the big business and the big capital. And secondly, when governments spend more, they need resources. So obviously they have to tax the super rich. So the super rich do not want government to spend because they do not want to be taxed, at least the India super rich. So precisely this class of big businessmen of India and the world do not want governments to spend. Quite unfortunately, the governments are listening to the voices of the Ambanis and Adanis, but not the millions and millions of Indian men and women who have actually given them the popular mandate to rule. This may sound political, but it is inevitable conclusion. So this is the political economy of India's economic contraction.